One of the most talked about hi-fi brands on YouTube is Eversolo. And let's face it, their products have been really very popular for offering a lot at lower price points competitively. But with the new DMP-A10, it doesn't have a low price, so how can that possibly still be true? And my review of the A10 is not going to be all hype. In fact, there are a few things about the A10 that I feel a little let down by, and I'm going to go hard on it for that, given its higher price. But I also believe in giving credit where credit is due. And overall, the A10 has really exceeded my expectations. It's an excellent hi-fi product, and it's got me questioning, can a modern in 2025 digital all-in-one music source like this be as good as more expensive separates? That is the most important question. I have always admired the concept of products like the Eversolo A10, the digital music server and streamer and DAC and preamplifier all in the one chassis, where the one app can control everything, including lots of useful functions and features. I mean, who doesn't love the idea of that? But that only works for me when all of the functions and features perform to the same high quality level, because I feel as a user of a product like this, when there's the desire to use something else, to go external, to maybe use an external DAC or whatever it is, the concept of this breaks down. And I've always had that desire. I've never been fully satisfied to a high level of sound quality by products like this. And I had that same doubtful mindset coming into this review. And taking the A10 out of the box, I wasn't initially sure how I felt about its aesthetic design. I am currently more keen on silver hi-fi components, and the A10 is very black and quite understated, and it has a little bit of an amplifier feel to it with the on-display heat sinks, and that's a very different look for a product like this. But the build quality is very nice. It definitely feels big company, sleek manufactured, and not built in a shed by a guy named Bob like some expensive hi-fi products can. And there are some interesting angles with nicely joined up curved sections to the casework. So it's anything but a rectangle box. And like I said, it's built very well. And it can't be an Eversolo without a touchscreen. And the A10 has their newer, bigger 6.5-inch screen that is very clear and very responsive for a touchscreen. Personally, if someone tries to touch my hi-fi, I want to break their fingers because I hate fingerprints. And thankfully, Eversolo have included an exceptionally nice remote control, which has a very shiny rear that is very nice, but also fingerprints and marks really easy, but it is a nice touch. And I did use the remote at times, and doing so makes the A10 work more like a traditional hi-fi component. So if you are an old school audiophile, you will likely dig this for sure. But really, I think the magic of Eversolo products has always been their excellent control app, and I will speak about that in detail shortly. The display can take on many different forms, either information-based or with various digital VU or spectrum type displays. So there is individual customization choices here, and that will have appeal for some. Or maybe you can just turn it all off with the remote control to go super stealthy. I mean, why not? One thing I did notice with this new screen is that it seems best when viewed from front on. You do see a little contrast shift from different more extreme viewing angles. But I also think this is to do with how light reflects off the screen. So if you are upgrading from an A6, you might notice this a little at first, but you won't care about it for very long, I can promise you that. We also have to talk about the second screen on the volume control, which is no doubt excessive, but very nice whichever way you break it down. And you can change how this screen looks too, and its brightness. The volume wheel itself, I do like the look of, and its action. It feels very well made, and it's extremely clicky in operation internally, but it's very fast and it offers a huge amount of volume adjustment for even the most sensitive of speaker systems. The rear of the A10 has a very impressive number of connections, likely something here for everyone. For analog outs, there are single-ended and balanced, and dual subwoofer outputs. And there are some nice controls for setting up subwoofers. There are 3 sets of analog inputs, including a balanced input, and that makes me very happy. There are 6 digital inputs, including HDMI with ARC, and that will make a lot of other people very happy, as will the 2 different network inputs. There is the normal RJ45 and an SFP fiber input, with a list of compatible SFP, not SFP Plus modules listed on the Eversolo website. And I missed this and bought some that are not compatible, so check the website so you don't make the same mistake as me. On the underside, there is a quick access bay for a toolless installation of up to 2 NVMe hard drives to use the A10 as a music server. So everything on the outside is very impressive so far, but what about the internals? Power supply snobs, such as my good self, will be pleased to see dual, pretty substantial toroidal transformer linear power supplies being used, with a claimed stable below 30U VRMS power delivery, which seems great to me. But actually what grabbed my attention more was the use of large ELNA capacitors in the power filtering and voltage regulation. You also cannot miss the 2 whopping sized gold OCXO clocks that are custom to Eversolo, and they claim to have extremely low jitter and exceptional timing accuracy. And these are some big boy clocks compared to all the others that I have seen before. For the digital chops, the A10 is running on an XMOS audio processor using an ESS Sabre 9039 Pro DAC chip, and it has a fully balanced analog preamplifier with an R2R volume control, and that explains the clicking when you change the volume. And I must not forget to mention the electrical isolation system that is built in here that isolates the digital from the analog sides of the A10 circuit, which is very cool. And I am no engineer, but I can say I was very impressed with everything I saw in terms of the overall layout, the separation of important circuits, and the attentions to details. It's all very impressive. Now let's talk about all of the key features and functions of the A10 and the Eversolo control app experience, because those 2 things are massively intrinsically linked. And the app has been improved a lot since it was introduced a few years ago. The main home screen layout is clear, so you know straight away pretty much everything you might want to do. But you can customize this screen to make it even more streamlined for you specifically. My recommendation is the first thing you do is familiarize yourself with the source page and then select some very important things such as your specific outputs. Out of the box, it's set to XLR/RCA, so it will just work for you. However, if you're using the balanced output, select the BAL-XLR option, as you will get clearer and better sound from my testing. You can also access some important settings here for your 7 different DAC filter modes. You have a balance control, controls for how the volume will be adjusted, and even the XLR connection polarity. So there is a great set of options and customization here. I mentioned good controls for setting up subwoofers, and what I appreciate here is being able to adjust the subwoofer volume level, crossover, and there is a delay control. And these are really useful tools for dialing in subwoofers for a power user. But I do wish there was individual controls for each subwoofer. If you are using 2, that would be much better. For music streaming, there is support for Tidal, Qobuz, Deezer, Amazon Music, Apple Music, as well as Spotify Connect, Apple AirPlay, Tidal Connect, It's Room Ready, and many more. And this level of streaming support, particularly including Apple Music, is another standout USP for Eversolo products that I know many people appreciate. I appreciate the user experience for both Tidal and Cobus. I find the Eversolo app is fantastic to use because it's super fast and responsive. And now I am familiar with it, I find it's natural to use. It doesn't feel awkward or too cumbersome to navigate around and find what I want, whether I'm exploring new music or listening to my favourite albums. What I like most about it is the mixture of the visual experience, so the larger album art, and how that is combined with all the necessary control and textual information. The layout of everything, the colour scheme, it's all great to use from my phone, but I do have a couple of criticisms. The first is every time I visit my favourite albums, I have to select how I want them to be organised. And then the next time I visit, that selection has been reset and I have to do it again. And this is super annoying to have to do every time because this is my favourites. I'm going to visit it a lot and I want it to stay set how I like it. So Eversolo, please change this. The second complaint I have is with the way the listening history is collected. I do like the fact that the last 5 albums you listen to are stored and that you can quickly access them again. However, I prefer it when an app builds a playlist from all of the individual music I have been listening to, and that list stays constant and keeps getting added to until I clear it, like how you get with the Hi-Fi Rose, JPlay, Blue OS and some others. Eversolo, please add this somehow. For navigating my own music stored on the NVMe hard drive, the user experience is very similar to streaming. But the album art is smaller for some reason, but it's still a pretty snappy and good experience, so I have no real complaints here. And speaking of how important the user experience is, one thing that has really impressed me is just how responsive the volume control is from the app to the A10. It seems like an insignificant thing, but it's really not. I definitely appreciated how the volume changes feel instant. Again, it's the excellent hardware and software integration that makes for a great overall experience. And it's important to mention the DSP options that are in the A10 because these can be very useful features, such as a parametric equalizer, such as delays, so you can adjust how your soundstage balances from a timing point of view, which is very different to a traditional balance control that changes the volume. One of the big DSP functions of the A10 is the room correction, and I have a huge amount to say about the Eversolo room correction, not all good, and I'm going to save that to the end of the review just in case that's not important to you. And I want to speak about sound quality first, because I feel if you're going to pay the premium price for the A10, which is £3,590, so a lot of money, you're doing so because you have very high expectations for its sound quality. I mean, that's nearly £3,000 more than an A6. So the big question is, does it deliver that? The A10 is quite a difficult product to speak specifically about its sound quality because it sounds very clean. It doesn't have too much character of its own. It doesn't have any standout negative things for me to really grumble about, but there are a lot of positive things to mention. And there are some familiar characteristics, maybe, being familiar with the Eversolo A6. But let me tell you now, the A10 is different to the A6. The A10 delivers a very, very high level of digital sound quality. And I started my listening testing using the A10 with the big and very transparent sounding Esoteric SO3 stereo power amplifier, driving my SVS Ultra Evolution Titan speakers. And I was instantly impressed with the A10 because the noise floor of the system was obviously low, and that allowed for a very precise and clear 3-dimensional soundstage to happen in my room. Sound starting well beyond the speakers, coming right out into the room, all with superb spatial positioning clarity. High-end, separate superb, and I was not expecting it to be that good. And I was also impressed by the scale, how big and how solid and how full and the bass power and everything I was getting from the A10. And that's sometimes the thing I notice that's not there with all-in-one types of products, but not the case here at all. The A10 was sounding excellent in that regard. Very clean. And it sounded a little bit warm to me initially as well, slightly warmer than definitely I was expecting from an Eversolo product. But I realised later it's not a warm sound, it's actually a neutral sounding, digital source. But what it's got that I really liked is it has, like the transients, the edges of the music have a nice mixture of soft crispness. So it's still crisp, it's still clear, but there's like a softness to the edges and like a nice sort of edge to all of the music. And that to me is straight away a sign of, better, good, very good digital sound quality. So this initial listening session was very telling for the A10 sound quality chops. It sounds excellent. But one potential major negative of a product like this is the lack of the ability to change things up. I mean, you can't change the DAC, you can't change the preamplifier, that's all locked in. So when it comes to the balance of the overall sound of a system, the power amplifier that you choose to use, of course, is going to be massively important. And I felt I also had to have an Eversolo F10 stereo power amplifier here to review the A10 because these are designed to go together. And I don't think you can fully assess one without the other as they complete each other's pictures. And listening to the A10 with the F10 is a different Eversolo sound to what I'm used to. And I think it might surprise a number of people just as much as it surprised me. Because the A10 F10 combo sounds surprisingly really very sweet, very tonally full, with a nice amount of warmth. So vocals can sound really tonally pleasing, but with Eversolo-like clarity and timing. There is also a nice and full bass that is tight and articulate, but with a nice, smooth, rounded character. And the transients of the music are again that nice mixture of soft crispness. So even less well-polished music is enjoyable to listen to. It's not hard or harsh like it sometimes can be. And I have been thinking about how is this possible? How is it possible to achieve this sound? Because I doubt any engineer sets out to create a sweet sound. But what I think it must be is the very clean, very well timed, low distortion, low noise floor sound of the A10. I think that's pretty obvious and pretty easy to think about. But I think with the F10 power amplifier, it's because it's being under stressed. Nothing in that amplifier is being stressed too hard. And it gives it this nice, soft and sweet, very relaxed sound combined with the clarity, timing of the A10. It's a really nice, really enjoyable, fun, but detailed and clear, but fun and sweet and warm and pleasing, but still dynamic sounding combination. I've really enjoyed the two together. And this duo has been fantastic to use with the Audio Solutions Figaro M2 speakers. And it's just been great to listen to. And I've listened to so much music on this system, it's crazy. But there is always a but. This type of presentation, I think, has two main downsides. The first one for me was that when the volume was lower, I found the system just sounded a little bit suppressed. It found a little bit kind of on itself, and it didn't really have like the full scale and the full dynamics and the full bass power at lower volumes compared to louder volumes. And louder volumes for me was about -20-ish on the A10's volume control. So when you crank the volume up, the system got a lot bigger, a lot more dynamic, and was a lot more fun. But at lower volumes, it was a little bit play. It's too safe for me. And the second one is, if you have like a sweeter type of presentation, that sweetness goes on everything. It's there for all music. And maybe that's not as, as honest to the music as maybe using a power amplifier with the A10 that has a more transparent, brutally honest, transparent sound. But look, it's a minor nitpick, something to think about, totally a user preference thing. But yeah, something definitely to think about. So I also wanted to test the A10 with some other manufacturer amplifiers, as you might already own a power amplifier that you love. So firstly, I tested the NAD M23, as I thought it would be a good Class D amplifier example that is about the middle ground. And I appreciated its more agile and precise sound compared to the F10, giving more space in the music and a crisper edge, which was better with some classical music. However, I did find myself missing the smooth flow, the bass fullness, and the sweetness of the F10. And I think over longer listening sessions, I would prefer the A10 F10 combo. However, it was very close, and I enjoyed the M23 almost equally as much, just with different pros and cons. So the A10 could be very good with a good Class D amplifier. I also tested the Galleon TS A75, as that is a different design of Class AB. And this was interesting because the bass was bigger and more full and more rounded than from the F10, and I like that. And the treble was definitely more stand out. So the Galleon showed that both the Eversolo F10 and NAD M23 power amps sound a little dark in their treble, which probably worked a little better with the A10. And it's the same story again. Over the longer listening session, I found myself preferring the overall music balance better from the A10 F10 combo. But look, I really enjoyed the Galleon too. It's very close, despite there being obvious differences between them. So all of this testing showed to me and proved to me that you can use the A10 with different power amplifiers, and it will work really well, again, because it has that very clean, very neutral sound. It also showed to me that you'll hear the differences in power amplifier quality and their characteristics. The A10 won't get in their way. That's very useful to know. But it also showed to me that I think there is something extra. There's a little bit more. There's a little bit of something special. I hate to use that word, but there is a little bit of something special when you use the A10 F10 together, like the Eversolo pairing, which you would expect, right? Those products are designed to go together, and there is a little bit extra there, that little bit of sweetness. I don't know where that sweetness comes from, but it really is. You miss it when it goes away. It's just like one of those things. It is a lovely thing. It's lovely. It's just, yeah, there's there's a something there. So look, again, it's just something to bear in mind. But what about using just the preamplifier in the A10 and using the analog inputs? And for me, that meant testing vinyl from an Origin Live turntable and Modrite PH9XT phono stage. And I was using the balanced input. And the first thing to point out here is the analog input options, because you can choose to digitize the analog input or not. Digitizing will be necessary if you want to use any of the DSP options, like the room correction. But I didn't want to do that, so I selected to pass through straight to the R2R preamplifier, so analog all the way through, and that did sound noticeably better, as you might expect. Now, I did find myself really cranking the volume when listening to vinyl, but the sound was excellent for its timing, and the soundstage was very well defined and 3D sounding. And I was very happy listening to records for the sound quality overall. If I had one criticism here, it would be that maybe the sound was to play it safe at lower volumes, and maybe not exciting enough either until the volume was really cranked up. But look, records sounded how I expected them to, very good, and how I expected them to for their character coming off of the Modrite phono stage, showing the preamplifier is very transparent. Lastly to speak about then is Eversolo's room correction feature. And this is likely a feature that's exciting for a lot of people because they might assume it's just a click a button, amazing sound guaranteed feature. And that's never what room correction is, so don't be thinking that. And look, if you don't know who I am, I've been using DSP in audio systems for well over 15 years. I've been an extensive user of Dirac Live for more than 8 years. So I'm probably the best person on YouTube to speak to you about room correction, but I'm also the worst person for Eversolo because, of course, I've used Dirac Live so much that for me, that sets the benchmark for my expectation of what room correction is in 2025. Dirac Live is the benchmark for room correction in the mass market. So of course, if you call something room correction in a high-priced, high-end digital product, my expectation is I'm going to have something similar to Dirac Live or Dirac Live. And that's what I was expecting from the Eversolo room correction. So how does it compare to Dirac Live? You know, is the Eversolo anywhere near as good as Dirac Live? Sadly not. It's not even remotely close. And that's definitely left me feeling disappointed. But what I do like is how Eversolo have made this tool super simple to use. In the app, you click room correction and then you select your microphone for measuring the system with its calibration file, and you can use your phone. But just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. I mean, just use common sense. You have maybe what, £5,000 worth of pre-power setup and how much money in speakers and everything else in your system, and you're going to drastically change the sound of that based on measurements that you've taken with a phone. And a phone is not designed for, acoustic measurements. So look, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. I recommend you get a dedicated measurement microphone like a mini DSP UMIC or Eversolo's EM01. And get yourself a microphone boom stand. I mean, I have a fancy one in the video, but you don't need that. Just get a cheap one from Amazon. They are about £25. And make sure you put the mic in the correct orientation for the calibration file and in the correct position for where you sit and listen. The workflow is super simple. You have to test you have enough volume for the measurements, which sounds a little like this. But remember, this is the volume of both speakers, but you measure the speakers individually, so the measurements will be quieter than this test. Next is running a frequency sweep and measuring each speaker individually, which sounds a little like this. So in less than 30 seconds, you have your measurement up. But it's very hard to see as it's so small and there are so many lines being shown, it's very confusing even to a power user like me. So Eversolo, please change this. You have a set of tools to select the correction behavior you want, such as what frequencies you want to correct for, so you can go old school and only correct for bass below 200 Hz like we did decades ago, but it's your choice. Where the biggest limitation of this system is for me is creating a target, because that is fundamental to what you will hear. And you only have a flat curve or a BK curve, which has a high frequency roll off, and that is it. So Eversolo, what if I don't want a flat response curve in my room? Because I've never wanted that, because it does not sound good. And the more than 150 people that I've done professional calibrations for, they didn't want that sound either. So that is a major fail for the Eversolo room correction. That is where Dirac Live offers something infinitely better, because it offers what room correction should be: a fully customizable sound, fully customizable sound profile that allows the user to fully control the sound in their room. So you can do what you want with it. That's what room correction needs to be. Plus, Dirac Live does more for you in the background, improving the clarity and more of what you're going to hear. So like I said, my expectation, if you call something room correction in 2025, it has to offer something similar, equivalent, or as close as possible to Dirac Live. And that's not here. So look, Eversolo, hopefully you can improve this feature over time. But look, I need to look at it a little bit broader. I am a power user with high expectations. This still might be a good function or feature for you. It might be something that improves the sound of your system. And if that's the case, definitely use it. But in its current state, it's not a system that I would ever use. I would never use this room correction. And that's a shame, because I like it. I like room correction as a feature. I think you can do some amazing things with it as part of audio system setup, but you couldn't with this Eversolo room correction as it is. So look, here's my take on it. Maybe improve this Eversolo. You're a great company for making things better. Maybe, make this room correction system infinitely better, or just give us access to Dirac Live, make it a user license upgrade thing so we can pay for it if we want to use it. And then if the A10 had that really high level of room correction built in, I honestly think it would be a perfect product. It'd be the perfect product of this type. So this has been my longest review ever, but the A10 is such a comprehensive product that does so many things so well. I felt it was important to go deep with the review like this, but I appreciate there are still some big holes in this review, such as how does the A10 compare to the A8 or the A6, and is it worth the premium? Sadly, I don't have access to an Eversolo A8, so I can't do that comparison for you. But I will speak about the comparison between the A10 and the A6 in the F10 power amp review that I will be doing soon, because I actually think that warmer, sweet, bold, slightly dark sound of the F10 could be a great power amplifier to use with the A6 as well. But I haven't tried it yet, so I can't give you any clues on that. But look, the way I'm looking at the F10's value proposition, it's what does it do? what sort of level of sound quality is it at, and how does it compare to the more expensive separates hi-fi system that I've been listening to, at the same time, trying to compare to see how it does and how well it does. And you know what? It gets really close. The separate system offers you more flexibility, of course, so you can do a bit more with it, but the A10, especially with the F10, that combination, it gets so close. It's really, really very close sound quality wise. It's at that higher quality level of more expensive separates in its own way. Plus it has like the functionality benefits, like everything being controlled from the one app. I think it's easily worth the price tag, And I think it sounds fantastic when you pair the A10 with the F10. And I just think the A10, it's excellent. It's an excellent hi-fi product. No hype, no bullshit, no hype. It's an excellent hi-fi product. So I hope you've enjoyed this very long, exhausting review. It's been exhausting to do, exhausting to deliver. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more.